Every single species on this planet spent millions of years adapting perfectly to Earth. I mean, fish developed gills to breathe underwater, polar bears grew incredibly thick fur to survive the ice, and then there's us. We literally burn in our own sunlight. Our spines constantly ache. We're pretty much the only species that looks around the world we supposedly evolved in and thinks, something's kind of off here. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're digging into Earth's absolute oddest biological mystery.
Okay, let's just dive right into this wild idea. What if we are the aliens? I want you to try looking at human biology not as this perfectly settled science, but more like a literal crime scene full of clues that just don't quite add up. Like, are we perfectly evolved apes, or are we an invasive species dropped onto a planet we just weren't built for? Let's examine the evidence, starting with something you probably had to deal with just last summer.
Think about our relationship with our local star. Most animals, like lizards, horses, elephants, they spend their entire lives just bathing in direct sunlight. They're perfectly calibrated for Earth. But us? We literally had to invent a chemical paste to rub all over our bodies just so we could step out safely. We had to invent sunscreen because our own sun is actively trying to cook us. And hey, it is not just our skin. 80%, that's the massive percentage of humans who are going to experience chronic back pain at some point in their lives. When 4 out of 5 members of an entire species share the exact same structural problem, you really have to stop blaming bad posture and start questioning the blueprint itself. I mean, other bipedal animals like ostriches or kangaroos, they were built from the ground up for standing. Our spines? They just seem badly retrofitted. And then there's childbirth, which is arguably the most dangerous birth process of any mammal out there. Before modern medicine came along, it was a huge leading cause of death. Think about it. A horse gives birth in maybe 30 minutes, and that foal is standing up and walking around within the hour. But a human baby, it can't even hold its own head up for months. We show up completely useless, way more helpless than any other animal that has ever existed here. Plus, our bodies seem to be constantly fighting this environment. Your immune system basically has one job, right? Protect you. But for roughly 30% of the global population, this system just goes to war against completely harmless, everyday Earth things. Pollen, peanuts, cat hair, dust. Your own defense system attacks the very air you breathe and the food you eat. Did evolution make a serious mistake here? Or are we somehow calibrated for somewhere else entirely? But honestly, the strangest clues aren't even physical, they're behavioral. First up, existential dread. Dolphins aren't out there having existential crises. Yet we walk around with the full, heavy terror of our own mortality, building entire civilizations and philosophies just to cope with it. Like, what survival advantage does that possibly provide? Second is environmental destruction. Every other species exists in a balanced ecological loop. We clear-cut forests. We poison rivers. We aren't really participating in Earth's ecosystem. We're taking it apart, which is exactly how an invasive species behaves. Section 1, the directed panspermia theory. So if we act like an invasive species, where exactly did we come from? Now, this isn't some fringe internet conspiracy talk. This comes straight from Francis Crick. Back in 1973, the Nobel Prize-winning co-discoverer of DNA proposed something called directed panspermia. That's the idea that life was deliberately seeded here by an intelligent civilization. Literally, the guy who decoded the very instructions of life looked at the data and essentially said, yeah, I don't think this adds up. Let's look at the timeline. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago as this completely molten hellscape of rock and toxic gas. Yet complex organic chemistry appeared just 700 million years later. In geological time, that is literally overnight. Life popped up almost the exact second the conditions barely allowed it. It's incredibly fast. Honestly, almost suspiciously fast. And we actually have hard forensic evidence that life can travel through space. In 1969, the Murchison meteorite crashed down in Australia, and it was carrying over 90 different amino acids. Those are the exact building blocks of life just riding around on a space rock. Plus, microscopic life survives out there right now. Tardigrades, those little microscopic water bears, they can survive the absolute vacuum of space, extreme cosmic radiation, and freezing temperatures. So life hitching a ride between worlds, it's highly plausible. Okay, so before we pack our cosmic bags and call it a day, let's see what mainstream biology has to say about all this. It brings us to a fascinating concept called evolutionary mismatch. Basically, this happens when an organism's traits evolved for one very specific environment, but are now completely misaligned because their environment changed way too rapidly. Let's see how this hard science actually explains those bizarre biological flaws we talked about. Let's revisit that crazy 80% back pain statistic. We only started walking upright about 6 million years ago, which sounds like a long time, but it's incredibly slow in evolutionary terms. Our spines are essentially built like a horizontal bridge meant for walking on all fours that evolution just decided to flip vertically. Gravity compresses our discs in ways they were literally never meant to handle. We are basically walking around in an unfinished, buggy beta version of an upright spine. And what about the sunburn? Why would we lose our fur? Well, the best scientific theory is thermoregulation. When our ancestors moved from shady, dense forests out into the blistering hot African savanna, they really needed a way to cool down while chasing prey. And sweat evaporates much, much better on bare skin. So we basically traded our built-in sun protection for the superpower of sweating, which allowed us to outrun literally every other animal on Earth. Getting a sunburn, that's just the receipt for that transaction. As for that terrifying childbirth process, scientists actually call it the obstetric dilemma. See, evolution was trying to do two totally conflicting things at the exact same time: make our brains massively intelligent while simultaneously keeping our pelvis narrow enough so we could walk efficiently on two legs. The pelvis just got caught in the middle. It creates a messy, really dangerous anatomical bottleneck. But from an evolutionary mismatch perspective, it actually makes totally logical sense. Section 2. The unexplained evolutionary speed. So mismatch theory does a great job explaining our physical flaws, but it totally misses our speed. Because here is the one massive mystery. No species in 4 billion years has done what we did, at the insane speed we did it. Look at dolphins. Highly social, super intelligent for 50 million years, yet they never built a single tool. Chimps figured out how to use sticks about 4 million years ago and pretty much stopped there. But us? In roughly 2 million years, we went from banging sharpened rocks together to living on the International Space Station. Just zoom in on this unprecedented acceleration for a second. Think about it. Just 200 years ago, there were no railroads. 125 years ago, no human flight at all. 75 years ago, we hadn't even touched space. And 35 years ago, no internet. We went from being a prey animal out on the savannah to landing robots on Mars and developing artificial intelligence in what is basically a geological blink of an eye. Literally nothing in the entire history of life on Earth even comes close to that. Now, scientists do have some solid theories for what sparked this. Cooking our food, for instance, gave us way more calories for massive brain growth. A lucky mutation in the FOXP2 gene might have unlocked complex speech. And our unique ability to teach across generations means we can essentially stack knowledge over time. But while all of these are true, many experts agree they still don't completely explain the sheer mind-bending velocity of human acceleration. It remains a huge puzzle with some pretty big missing pieces. So, the most honest answer science has right now is simply that we don't fully know. The mismatch theory is incredibly strong, sure, but it doesn't give us the entire picture. As the data shows, we are almost certainly a product of this planet, but almost certainly is not definitely. And true science means being willing to ask the really uncomfortable questions when the puzzle pieces don't snap together perfectly. Which leaves us with a lingering thought to wrap up this explainer. We are, without a doubt, the strangest thing Earth has ever produced. We burn in our own sun, we literally break under the planet's gravity, and yet we constantly build rockets to search the sky. Maybe our restlessness, this deep existential dread we all feel, isn't a biological flaw at all. Are we simply on a 200,000-year search for a home we